made this program possible, our corporate partners and grantors. This is a group of people who, for whatever reason, have connected with the WPB either programmatically, because they care about fostering the leadership opportunities that women have in the world today, but a variety of reasons that has caused them to affiliate with our corporate partners and grantors. And I would like to ask you to hold your applause. There are several. We're glad to know that this group is increasing in numbers, so let me introduce everyone and then we will recognize them. Representing Alabama Power, Margaret Bentley, will you please stand just quickly? Moore Wealth Management, Susan Moore, who I believe had to slip out. She was here earlier today. Kiplinger, represented by Knight Kiplinger. The Deverly Group, Total Merrill. And today we have with us Leah and Chris Deverly and Rob Kennedy. Wilson Price, Baranco Billingsley, PC. And representing them today, Sandy Coker, Richard Stabler, and Chick Jordan. Charlotte Gaston Interiors. And Charlotte Gaston, I think I saw her here earlier today. Gallery One Fine Art, Sandy Applin. Representing the hotel at Auburn University, Rick Reed. The Flower Store, Stanley Sistrunk was with us last evening. I don't think I've seen him here today, but they have been wonderful supporters for us through the years. The Office of AU Outreach, Dr. Rick Cook. And finally, our newest corporate partner, Cykel Enterprises. And Cy Garfinkel could not be here with us today, but we are just delighted to have them join us. Please help me thank all of these. And two very special people who have been staunch supporters of the College of Human Sciences and the Women's Philanthropy Board through the years, through some very important community service grants. I'd like to introduce Alabama Senator Ted Little and Alabama State Representative Mike Hubbard. And next, that group of people who keeps this organization going, that's our executive committee. They work for a 2-year period, making sure that everything is planned and put together and that all of our events come off and that we move in the direction that we need to be going. I'm not going to call their names individually, but they are listed on page 17 of your program. Could I ask the Executive Committee of the Women's Philanthropy Board to please rise and be recognized. And finally, some very special guests from the university. Our First Lady, Susie Googe. Representing the Auburn University Board of Trustees, Virginia Thompson. Our Executive Vice President, Don Large. And our Director of Athletics, Jay Jacobs. I've not seen Jay, who used to be here and has been at virtually all of our events, but we want to thank all of you for being with us. We have 3 honors that we want to recognize at this time. And one is a recognition of a very special effort that a couple of alumni from Auburn University have made. I would like to ask Mike and Leanne Rowe to make their way to the podium, please. I want to tell you, Mike and Leanne are graduates, as I said, of Auburn University. They live in Tampa, Florida. and have been a part of a very important campaign that our president launched earlier this year. It was a matching program to increase the number of endowed professorships that we have at Auburn University. The goal was to endow 81 professorships, and I think that they wound up endowing like 96. So it was a campaign that was hugely, hugely successful. Mike and Leanne are endowing one of those professorships, and their choice has been to do this because of their commitment to the Women's Philanthropy Board, to do it through this group. It is designated for a young professional faculty member to support their building their experience, a professional development experience in international programming. I am just delighted that Mike and Leanne could be here with us today, and I would like you to please help me thank them. Well, after my notes slid in the floor there, let's see if I can regroup. I don't have to have notes to tell this next part. I think that never is it more important for us to recognize donors than when we see this happening with individuals who are at a relatively young age and who are making a significant commitment in support of their families. Christy Myers is our Director of Development, and she has, back early on, I guess, in this past year, looking at what she might do as a part of the faculty staff campaign, decided that she wanted to do not one award, but two. She wanted to give a gift in support of her grandmother. And she was talking to me the other day about what this gift means to her. She said that the comment that she's heard her grandmother make through the years is that if nothing else, she wanted to make sure that her two granddaughters got an education and that they were able to leave college debt-free. Now that's a gift. That is Mary Frances Holland, and she has established the Mary Frances Holland Endowed Scholarship. Along with that, she is honoring her parents with the Cleveland E. and Patricia M. Cone Endowed Fund for Excellence. Could I get that family to please stand and be recognized? You know who the other one is. Sid James. A very special honor in recognition of her mother. Sid James Nakjivan and her brother Calvin Ellington James and her sister Catherine have gone together to honor their mother on a very special birthday with an endowed scholarship. Could I ask Dora James to please stand and be recognized? That places both the James family and Christy Myers as legacy donors to the Women's Philanthropy Board, and we are just very honored that you would make these gifts and very, very appreciative. And now, I would ask that we take a minute and enjoy our meal and get ready for a very, very special address. Thank you.
Margaret Bentley. I'm president of the Women's Philanthropy Board, and it's my pleasure today to introduce our keynote speaker. I was telling a friend this morning that I would be introducing Knight Kiplinger today, but you just looked at me stunned, you know, just kind of vacant. I was like, yeah, you do know who Knight Kiplinger is. Margaret, he is a rock star. Okay, well, I haven't ever introduced a rock star, but I'll call my best Diane Sawyer, you know. But he really is very, very well known and well respected, and you probably all have seen him on national television or heard him on national radio, and we're just so pleased that he has spent 24 hours in Auburn, Alabama with us, and he's speaking to us today on women, philanthropy, and our economic future. So I can't wait to hear that. But usually when I introduce someone, I like to be really short and really clever. But I can't do either one of those today because to be short would really do Mr. Kiplinger an injustice, and you too, because he truly is a phenomenal man. So allow me just to highlight just a few of the things. Of course, he's editor-in-chief of Kiplinger's Personal Finance Magazine, Kiplinger Letter, and Kiplinger.com. And if you haven't been to that website, it's amazing. And a little warning, be sure you got a few hours, because I did that last night at 1 in the morning. I finally was able to part with it. It's really life-changing. A lot of good stuff on that. When you talk about Knight Kiplinger and his business, there's a lot of words like he's the first and the best in the world and the longest published and the most ethical, all kind of wonderful. Admire you so much for that. The Kiplinger, the Personal Finance Magazine, is the most widely read and the longest published forecasting publication in the world. The Letter is the earliest published and the longest in publication and most widely read. His company, Kiplinger Washington Editors Inc., has also won awards. They've been named one of the world's most ethical companies and the 2002 Business Ethics Award. Also, Mr. Kiplinger does something that we talk about a lot here. He practices personal philanthropy as well as corporate philanthropy. Of course, we're so proud that he's one of the sponsors of Women's Philanthropy Board. And also, he is past chair and sings with the Washington Chorus. All these wonderful things, and you can sing too. That's amazing. Of course, you support that with your time and support, and also done fundraising for your schools, including serving on the Alumni Advisory Board for Cornell University, which is your alma mater. So let's get on with the show, and let's give Mr. Kiplinger a warm Auburn rock star welcome.
A rock star. Wait until I tell my children. If they heard that phrase put on me as a tag, they would be thinking about geology rather than music. They'd be thinking sedimentary rock and metamorphic rock and rocks a million years old. But I will take it. Thank you. My face is burning, but that was a very, very kind introduction. Better than the introduction I had some years ago. The fellow said, our next speaker, whom I've spent some time with today, I've found to be a very modest man, and he has much to be modest about. I later heard that was first used by a British politician in reference to a political foe of his. So it was not a slip of the tongue, it was a deliberate insult. I hope that was not the case with me. What a pleasure it is to be here on my first visit to Auburn, Alabama. And I am better traveled in the state of Alabama than most Yankees. I can say that without fear of contradiction. The questions I get about the Deep South when I return to Washington are really outrageous, and I will not share any of them with you today. But I have traveled a few times in this state, visits to Birmingham, which is a wonderful city. My first college town tour was at that other city, starts with T, across the state a bit. But they asked me first, and I went, so be it. I come before you today wearing several hats. That, of course, is a financial journalist, which I am, but also as a husband, a father of 2 daughters, and a father also of a son. And I'd like to see a few men here today for moral support. Thank you for coming. This is a wonderful celebration of the continuing ascent of women as entrepreneurs, civic leaders, and philanthropists. Now, I, for one, have never doubted the power of women. After all, I married an elementary school teacher. And talk about a tough job. What I do each day pales in comparison to the challenges that my wife faced as a special ed teacher and still faces today as a frequent institute teacher. And I'm very proud that my only son has chosen elementary education as his career, teaching 5th grade in the inner city of Washington, D.C. I'm very proud of him. And my 2 daughters are accomplished young professionals, one in social service with children's health issues in Boston, Massachusetts, the other an interior architect in Washington, D.C. On every side of my family, I come from long lines of strong-willed women. The founder of our publishing company, a very talented journalist, my grandfather, got his entrepreneurial drive not from his father, but from his mother. When her husband's business failed about 1905, he was a carriage maker, and for some reason he thought this was a high-growth industry, and with a good future in 1905, well, he wasn't a forecaster, was he? When his business failed, his wife, my great-grandmother, organized the whole family into a door-to-door sales team to hawk aluminum pots and pans throughout the southern United States. They sold aluminum cookware for the Wherever Cookware Company. My grandfather said in later years he hated door-to-door selling, and it helped him decide upon a different occupation to pursue. But his mother's organizing of the family, father and 3 brothers, 3 sons, into the door-to-door sales force, put 3 boys through college, Georgia Tech, Ohio State. That was the strength and resolve of my great-grandmother. All of my grandmothers and step-grandmothers, and I had at one time 4 of them, that's another story. They were mothers and homemakers, but all of them at some point in their lives worked outside the home at paying jobs, which was rather unusual in the 1920s and 30s. One was a secretary, one was a professional writer, one a department store sales clerk, one a school truant officer. They valued their independence, and when 2 of them were hit with divorce, also rather rare in the 20s and 30s, they were able to earn a living and support themselves. So much for my lineage. The century in which all of us were born, the 20th century, can be correctly called the century of the woman. In that century just past, women made more progress legally, financially, occupationally, socially than all of the 3,000 previous years of human history. This amazing female empowerment was confined largely to the advanced nations of European and North American origin. But by the end of the 20th century, this empowerment was beginning to spread throughout the globe, from Asia to Latin America, Africa to the Middle East. Indeed, the accelerating ascent of women in the less developed countries today will be one of the most important economic trends of the 21st century. Imagine the human progress that will be possible when half of the world's population, women, now largely outside a global market economy, are empowered by legal rights by property rights, by educational opportunity, to be high-achieving producers, consumers, business owners, and investors. The change in the world will be positive and profound. Now, I was thinking this morning, listening to interesting presentations, that women have long been holders of wealth and power, really since the beginning of time. But until the 20th century, the early part of the 20th century, wealth and power came to women almost entirely through fathers or husbands, by inheritance or marriage, by birth or death. For example, in mid-18th century America, arguably the richest woman in 18th century America was a 26-year-old widow in the British colony of Virginia. At 18, she married a very rich man, 20 years her senior. That's what 18-year-olds did in 18th century America. When this planter died a few years later, she and her 2 children inherited his fortune. At 26, she inherited 27 square miles of Virginia, 17,000 acres, and, as was the custom in that day, hundreds of enslaved African Americans. The pretty and rich young widow didn't need to marry for money a second time, had already done that. So for her next husband, she chose a tall, handsome, athletic guy her own age. In the parlance of that day, he was a hunk. This hunk was also smart and ambitious. The rich young widow's name, Martha Dandridge Custis. Her second husband, the hunk, George Washington. Yes, the father of our country married for both love and money. Now, women's traditional path to wealth and power by inheritance or marriage hardly changed at all in the 19th century. But in that century, women began to run things. They began to start and run enterprises. First, not business enterprises, but sometimes business enterprises. They ran farms, plantations, retail businesses. Usually when a husband got sick, or died, or was absent at war. And in the 19th century, women became active in civic affairs in America, especially reform movements. And as a matter of fact, women cut their teeth in leadership in America in the civic and social realm before business. They started and ran reform movements like abolition, women's political rights, temperance, prison reform, rescuing women from the oldest profession, prostitution, fighting poverty in cities. By the dawn of the 20th century, the stage was set for business formation by women. Entrepreneurship that would, for the first time in world history, enable women to create their own fortunes, not receiving the money from somebody else. They became, in the early days of the 20th century, self-made female plutocrats. Fascinatingly, the first 2 female self-made millionaires in America were not part of the dominant white female population. They were African American women. This is really quite remarkable considering the barriers to business success that all women experienced. One of these, Annie Turnbow Malone. The other, Sarah Breedlove Walker, whom we know in history as Madam C.J. Walker. And both of their fortunes in the early days of the 20th century were based on businesses they founded to sell hair products and cosmetics to black women. Annie Turnbow Malone and Madam Walker were also the first great women philanthropists of any racial background. They gave their own fortunes to charity in larger percentages than most white multimillionaires of that era. Annie Malone lived conservatively and used her wealth to send hundreds of youths on scholarship to black colleges and universities across America. Annie Malone gave $25,000, when that was really serious money, to Howard University Medical School in Washington, D.C. She gave $25,000 to found the Colored YMCA in St. Louis. She founded orphanages in St. Louis, and then moved the business to Chicago, where she continued those good works. She's not nearly as well known as Madam C.J. Walker, but deserves to be much better known. Sarah Breedlove Walker actually started working as a salesperson for Annie Malone's cosmetics and hair product business. She went on to leave that company, start her own competing business, and it flourished in the early teens of the 20th century. She died fairly young at 51 in 1919. She left 2/3 of an enormous fortune to charity, to Tuskegee Institute, to the NAACP, to Bethune-Cookman College. Now, Malone and Walker were very different in lifestyles. Malone lived frugally. Madam C.J. Walker lived lavishly, larger than life. But they shared a passion for giving. They were extremely generous to their employees, which was not the norm in American business in that era. And their sales distribution method, recruiting enterprising, ambitious young women to sell their products door to door, gave undreamt of material well-being and security to thousands of young black women throughout America. Their businesses were really the prototype of today's Avon and Tupperware and Amway. Mary Kay Cosmetics would give a pink Cadillac to their top producers. Well, Annie Malone, 100 years before, gave diamond rings to her top producers. Well, I find those stories fascinating, and there's so many lessons, even today, from the lives of these two first self-made women millionaires in America. At Kiplinger, we've been studying and reporting on the ingredients of financial success, business success, for 90 years. In my own 4 decades as a journalist, I've distilled what I've learned into a few simple pieces of advice. Now, students of Sid James have heard some of these in their course, because I understand Sid uses some of that material. So you students can tune out. I'll keep it short. Key number 1 to financial security: invest in yourself. The most valuable asset you will ever own can't be wiped out in a market crash, can't be confiscated by the government. It's your own earning power, rooted in your education and job skills. Keep your earning power growing through continuous education, training, and personal development. If you're working now in a field that is prone to periodic layoffs or falling earnings, think about a career change. And if you don't want to be dependent on anybody else, consider self-employment. You will never work harder in your life. Forget that myth. I want to be my own boss and set my own hours and come and go as I please. You will never work harder than in self-employment, but it can be very rewarding, especially that sense of independence. Key number 2, protect yourself and your loved ones. I know insurance is boring, but listen for 30 seconds. Before you acquire any financial assets, make sure you have enough insurance against life's big risks: serious illness, disability, long-term illness, early death. Most people, young families in particular, are woefully underinsured. End of spiel. Key number 3, Borrow sparingly. Use credit only to purchase things of lasting value. A home, education, the ultimate investment, maybe a car, that's a big maybe. Pay cash for everything else. Clothing, travel, entertainment, furniture. Do you know anyone who ever got into big financial trouble because they didn't borrow enough money? I don't. Key number 4, pay yourself first. If you feel you never have any money left over at the end of the month for investing, for donating to charity, after you pay all those bills, try reversing the process. Make the first check you write a deposit to your mutual fund account, your brokerage account, your 401k, your IRA. Make your second check to a fund that you have created for charitable giving. Then pay all your regular bills, finishing up with your credit card bill. Don't have enough money at the end of your bill paying? You know what to do. Trim the discretionary spending, but continue to pay yourself first. Key number 5, as an investor, don't swing for the fences, go for the home run. Those who swing for the fences do get the occasional home run, but they also strike out a lot too. Their lifetime batting average, or average annual total return as an investor, suffers accordingly. So shy away from speculative investments, IPOs, buying on margin, commodity trading. Don't try to time stock markets, because I don't know anybody who does it well. Use dollar cost averaging to invest regularly in markets good, bad, and lackluster. Have the courage and patience to wait out the inevitable, really stinko bear market, like early 2009. This morning, we got very good advice to buy the most shunned, scorned asset class, because that's probably the one that is poised for the greatest future gain. Very good advice. Key number 6, diversify, diversify, diversify. Diversification was once considered boring when people were chasing the hot asset class of the moment. Tech stocks in the late 90s, residential real estate in 04, 05, 06, commodities in 07. But successful investors have always known that any one class of assets, stocks, real estate, bonds, commodities, cash, will have its day in the doghouse and its day in the sun. That's why you've got to own a mix of all these assets in a proportion that's suitable and comfortable for your age, your income, your family responsibilities, and your tolerance for risk. Key number 7. Now we're getting down to the big stuff. I put the big stuff at the end. Live simply today for a more comfortable tomorrow. Deferred gratification is no fun. Just ask my children when they were teenagers. Deferred gratification is no fun, but it's the only way I know to fund your long-term goals. College for your kids or grandchildren, a vacation home you've always wanted, early retirement, a generous bequest to your alma mater. Take a close look at your current lifestyle and try to separate the needs and the wants. If you can do that, the rest is easy. If you see a lot of spending that is dispensable, consider it found money for the bigger dreams of your life. The final key, number 8, give generously to create a better world. Your own financial security depends, far more than you may know, on the financial, physical, and spiritual health of others in your community, in your nation, in the world. When you share your good fortune by donating your money, time, and talent to charity, you help create a stronger economy and a healthier, safer world. So give generously to the charities of your choice. It's amazing how many of these principles have been practiced for decades by successful women. Let's look at a few profiles, statistical characteristics of a group, very interesting group of people, millionaire women business owners. And for a lot of this data, I'm very indebted to author Thomas Stanley of Marietta, Georgia. If you've never read his book, Millionaire Women Next Door, I heartily recommend it, Dr. Thomas Stanley. It's a wonderful blueprint for living, along with a great book by my colleague at Kiplinger's Personal Finance magazine, Janet Bogner, who wrote Money Smart Women. Let's look at these millionaire female business owners. What are they like? First of all, they are very frugal. Now, male business owners as a group tend to be simple living and frugal, but the female business owners are more so. They generally don't spend a lot of money on fancy houses, fancy clothes and cars, and exotic travel. They live comfortably, but their lifestyle would not visually brand them as rich. Dr. Stanley calls them the millionaire next door. I call them America's invisible rich. These women are uncommonly generous. They are more philanthropic than people of similar wealth. You say, well, a millionaire business owner, of course she's philanthropic. No, control for their income and their assets. These millionaire women business owners are more generous by far, not just with their family, which can actually be a problem sometimes, a debilitating generosity towards family members, but that's another subject. They're very generous towards their communities. Now, some of Dr. Stanley's data is almost 10 years old, but I want to give you some of the highlights of a decade ago. Perhaps the numbers have changed a bit. I'd be very surprised if they have changed significantly. The general population gives about 2% of its annual income to charity. Millionaire male business owners give about 5% of their annual income to charity. Women business owners give 7%. As a footnote, I encourage old-fashioned tithing. 10% of your earnings should go to the charities of your choice. Other characteristics. At death, wealthy women give more generously by bequest than comparably wealthy men. 21% of the estates examined in statistical samples left by wealthy women, 21% of those estates have charitable bequests. Only 13% of similarly wealthy men make charitable bequests in their wills. You men out there, that's a call to action. We're a competitive bunch. Let's be competitive in this area too. Of the men and women who make charitable bequests, actually the amount of their estates they leave to charity are very similar, a little under 1/3. 10 years ago, the number was about 29%. As Dr. Stanley shows, and as my research has shown, there is a high correlation between simple living, wealth creation, and generosity. The key to building wealth is not how much you earn. That's what Stanley calls income account rich, rather than balance statement rich. The key to building wealth is not how much you earn, it's how much you don't spend, how much you save, how much is invested for future wealth. I tell young adults, and I talk to a lot of college audiences, the biggest impediment to your ever being rich is living like you're rich before you are. The last 2 years have been very tough on all Americans. Very, very tough on small business owners. Very tough on entrepreneurs, because credit to start a business, expand a business, sustain a business, just keep the doors open has been very, very hard to come by. It's been a tough couple of years for philanthropy, for raising money and for giving money, because many people have seen a terrible erosion of their net worth. You've heard of the wealth effect. When your on-paper wealth has been increasing, whether you capture those gains or not, you are more inclined to give away more generously if your paper wealth is increasing. Right now we have a reverse wealth effect in America. People have turned cautious about their giving because of this erosion. A year ago we had the first small dip in total giving in America in decades. Unclear whether we'll see another small dip this year in giving. But foundation corpuses, charitable giving accounts of all sorts, have taken a severe hit, and nonprofits are hungry for funding today. Now, America and the global economies will regain their footing. The economy is mending. Our expectations have been lowered. I've been saying that less bad is the new good. A lot of us will take it. We celebrate a slower rate of decline in some index that we used to very impatiently cheer higher and higher. Now we celebrate a smaller rate of contraction. America faces many, many tough challenges. A long hangover from the Great Recession. We have staggering public deficits and debt, state, local, and federal. We have daunting obligations to our senior citizens, current and future. Social Security, public pensions, Medicare. We have an overdependence on foreign energy, primarily foreign petroleum. As a society, we have been overspending and undersaving. Yeah, we have a lot of tough problems in America, but sometimes in the middle of these problems, we do not sufficiently appreciate the strengths of this America. Now, I could give a whole speech on the problems, and if my subject today were the economic outlook, I'd be talking much more about those. But instead, I'm going to do a bump and run on those and give a little more time to the unappreciated strengths. This is a spacious nation with plenty of room to grow. I'm talking population growth. America grows each year at a little less than 1%. It might not seem like much, but compare this to the contracting, aging populations of Europe and Japan and Russia, and some people even think China, where coercive population control has been practiced too long. We have room to grow, and we're rich in resources. We're still a magnet for bright, ambitious young people from all over the world, especially foreign students in science and technology who come to our country to fill a skills gap left by our own U.S.-born youths not taking a lot of the tough courses in science and technology. Go out to Silicon Valley, the biotech corridors of Boston and Washington, Austin, Texas, and talk to entrepreneurs out there about their hunger for more and more well-educated immigrants to staff their businesses. And you'll understand why we need immigration reform to make it a more orderly process. Low skill, middle skill, and high skill. We've got a ways to go in improving public elementary and secondary education in America, but make no mistake about it, we're making progress there. My son teaches in a public charter school in Washington, D.C., publicly funded but independently managed. And this school is doing amazing things with inner city kids who many people had given up on. Exciting things happening in public education. And of course, higher education, still the envy of the world. The research universities of America are still doing world-class research in alternative energy, the life sciences, and so many other fields. Many of us in business complain about the business climate in America. Regulation, taxation, yes, it is often onerous, but relative to many other advanced nations of the world and even many emerging economies of the world, our business climate is still pretty good. This is still the land of the second chance and the third chance and the fourth chance. Entrepreneurs can fail once or twice, pick themselves up, and try something new. Finally, we are still the most open nation on earth. What do I mean by that? I mean open to new ideas, to labor, to capital from around the world, to products from around the world. Now, it is tough to operate in business in an open economy. It means it's open season anywhere in the world on what you do. Somebody's out there trying to eat your lunch. An open economy is a tough economy to do business in. But that's the direction the world is going. We know the rules. We know what it's like to compete against everybody else in the world in a way that a closed economy with trade barriers doesn't know. It makes us tough. I travel around America a lot in my reporting. It really does me good to get out of Washington and get out of New York and get out of Boston and travel in the real America. I meet men and women like you in business, in government, in academia, men and women on the firing line creating our future, creating the new America. Women will be key players, even more so than today in America's future. Never before have so many talented women occupied positions of such high leadership in business, government, academia, nonprofits. And these women bring to their tasks, to their challenges, a combination of aptitudes and life experiences and inclinations that, I dare say, is distinctly female. I'm talking about the balance that successful women achieve between intellect and intuition, reason and emotion, pushing and nurturing, ambition and compassion. The blend of these traits is what makes women into great leaders, and it augurs very well for our nation and the world. I leave you today with my best wishes for success in the difficult, exhilarating, frustrating, challenging times ahead. Thank you very much.